The silver shuttle descended silently through the thick clouds, its sleek surface glinting faintly in the sunlight. Below, a vast expanse of green stretched out as far as the eye could see. Earth's sprawling wilderness awaited them. Inside the shuttle, 3 alien students sat quietly, their eyes fixed on the viewscreen showing the approaching landscape. Kalen leaned forward slightly, his expression one of mild curiosity mixed with arrogance. Lyra, seated beside him, clasped her hands nervously, her wide eyes scanning the dense forest below. Jax, the quietest of the trio, adjusted a small device on his wrist, ensuring it was calibrated for Earth's unusual atmosphere. Their mentor, Professor Dren, stood at the front of the cabin, his voice calm but firm. "Remember," he said, turning to face them, "this is not just another field trip. Earth has earned its reputation as a death world for good reason. Stay alert and follow protocol at all times." Kalen rolled his eyes subtly, though he didn't dare do so openly. To him, the warnings seemed exaggerated. How dangerous could this planet really be? The shuttle touched down softly in a clearing surrounded by towering trees. The air outside was cool and carried the scent of damp earth and pine. As the hatch opened, the group stepped onto the soft ground, their boots sinking slightly into the mossy surface. Kellen took a deep breath, then smirked. "This doesn't look so bad," he muttered under his breath. Lyra shot him a glance but said nothing. She had read about Earth's unpredictable environment and wasn't about to underestimate it. Professor Dren began setting up the base camp, instructing the students to gather samples of nearby plants and soil. Lyra eagerly moved toward a cluster of fern-like plants, her scanner humming softly as she examined their structure. Jack stayed closer to the shuttle, tinkering with some equipment while keeping an ear out for any unusual sounds. Kalen wandered farther away, drawn by the distant call of birds, or what he assumed were birds. He paused near a stream, watching the water ripple over smooth stones. It all seemed so peaceful, almost serene. But peace, they would soon learn, was an illusion on Earth. As Lyra knelt to inspect a strange flower with vibrant red petals, something buzzed past her ear. She swatted instinctively and felt a sharp sting on her hand. Looking down, she saw a tiny insect lodged in her skin. Her heart raced as she pulled it free, examining the creature closely. Its size was minuscule, yet its bite burned like fire. "Kalen," she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. "I think I've been bitten." Kalen jogged over, his smug demeanor fading when he saw the swelling around her hand. "What did you touch?" he asked sharply. Before she could answer, Jax arrived, already pulling out a medical kit. "It's probably venomous," he said, applying a neutralizing gel to the wound. Lyra winced but nodded gratefully. "This isn't like home," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Back on their planet, most organisms were docile or easily avoided. Here, even the smallest things seemed intent on causing harm. By the time night fell, the group had settled into their temporary camp. The darkness brought new challenges. A chorus of unfamiliar noises echoed through the forest, making it hard to relax. Shadows danced between the trees, cast by the flickering light of their portable energy source. Kalen lay awake, staring at the canopy above. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Was Earth truly as harmless as he thought? Or was there truth to the stories that had preceded their arrival? Unbeknownst to them, the planet had only begun to reveal its secrets. The next morning, the group woke to the sound of rustling leaves and distant growls. The air felt heavier than before, filled with a strange tension that made everyone uneasy. Kalen stretched lazily as he stepped out of his tent, still convinced that Earth's dangers were overblown. Lyra, however, moved cautiously, her scanner already in hand. She had spent most of the night replaying the events of the previous day. The insect bite, the swelling, and couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Professor Dren gathered them around the makeshift table where they reviewed their findings. "Today," he began, "we'll explore further into the forest. Stay close and keep your scanners active at all times." His tone was stern, leaving no room for argument. Kalen nodded absently, but Lyra exchanged a worried glance with Jax. Something about the professor's seriousness unnerved her. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the trees grew taller, their branches twisting together to form a thick canopy overhead. The sunlight filtered through in patches, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. Birds chirped loudly, and the occasional snap of twigs underfoot echoed around them. Lyra paused by a stream, captivated by the sight of a large animal drinking water nearby. It was massive, with shaggy fur and sharp claws. She didn't recognize it from any of the data files she'd studied. "Is that a bear?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Jax turned to look, his eyes widening behind his visor. "Stay back," he warned softly. But Kalen, ever the skeptic, scoffed. "It's just an animal," he said, stepping closer despite Jax's protests. "How dangerous can it really be?" The bear lifted its head suddenly, sniffing the air. Its dark eyes locked onto Kalen, and in an instant it reared up on its hind legs, letting out a guttural roar. Lyra gasped, frozen in place, while Jax scrambled to pull out his energy shield generator. Kalen stumbled backward, his confidence shattered as the beast charged toward him with terrifying speed. "Activate your shield," Jax shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Kalen fumbled with the device on his wrist, finally managing to activate it just as the bear reached him. A shimmering barrier sprang up between them, deflecting the creature's massive paws. The force of the impact sent Kalen tumbling to the ground, his heart pounding wildly. Lyra screamed, clutching her scanner tightly, unsure what to do. Jax quickly adjusted the settings on his own equipment, emitting a high-pitched frequency designed to disorient wildlife. The bear hesitated, shaking its head violently before retreating into the bushes. For several moments, no one spoke. The only sounds were their ragged breathing and the fading echoes of the bear's footsteps. Kalen sat up slowly, his face pale. He looked at his companions, embarrassment and fear warring in his expression. I thought it wouldn't attack," he stammered, his usual bravado gone. Professor Dren arrived moments later, alerted by the commotion. He surveyed the scene silently, his gaze lingering on Kalen. "This is exactly why Earth is called a Deathworld," he said gravely. "Even the animals here act differently. They're not merely curious. They're aggressive, territorial, and unpredictable." That evening, as they huddled around the glowing energy source, the mood was somber. Kalen avoided meeting anyone's eyes, replaying the encounter in his mind. Lyra stared into the flames, lost in thought. "It wasn't trying to defend itself," she murmured. "It saw us as a threat, or maybe prey." Jax nodded, adding quietly, "And that's just one species. There are millions more out there, each with its own instincts and behaviors." For the first time since arriving, Kalen realized how much he didn't know about this planet. Earth wasn't just wild. It was alive, teeming with creatures that followed rules far removed from anything he understood. And yet, despite the danger, he couldn't help but feel a spark of fascination. If Earth was so deadly, how had humans managed to survive here? The question lingered unanswered as the fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows across their faces. The days that followed were filled with small but constant reminders of Earth's hostility. Each morning brought new challenges, and the group quickly learned that danger didn't always come in the form of large predators. It was the little things, the unseen, the unexpected, that often posed the greatest threats. One afternoon, Lyra knelt by a cluster of bright orange mushrooms, her scanner humming softly as she recorded data. She reached out to touch one, her gloved hand hovering just above its surface. "These are fascinating," she said, more to herself than to anyone else. "Their chemical composition is unlike anything we've seen before." Before she could make contact, Jax grabbed her arm gently but firmly. "Wait," he said, his voice low. "We don't know if they're safe." He adjusted the settings on his scanner, analyzing the spores drifting lazily in the air around them. His expression darkened. "They're releasing particles that could be toxic. Don't breathe too deeply." Lyra pulled her hand back immediately, her curiosity tempered by caution. "You're right," she admitted, stepping away from the mushrooms. "I keep forgetting how much we don't know about this place." Later that evening, as they prepared their meal, Kalen noticed red welts forming on his arms. At first, he dismissed them as nothing serious, perhaps an allergic reaction to something in the air. But when Jax began scratching furiously at his neck, it became clear that something was wrong. The insects of Earth, tiny and relentless, had found their way through the protective layers of their suits. "These bugs are everywhere," Kalen grumbled, swatting at the air. "How do humans even live like this?" "They adapt," Professor Dren replied, applying a soothing gel to his own irritated skin. "Over generations, they've built immunity to many of these irritants. For us, though, it's different. Our bodies aren't used to Earth's biology." As if to prove his point, a sudden storm rolled in without warning. Dark clouds gathered overhead, and within minutes, rain poured down in sheets. The ground turned to mud, swallowing their boots with every step. Lightning illuminated the sky, followed by deafening thunderclaps that made Lyra flinch. They scrambled to secure their equipment, but the wind tore at their tents, threatening to collapse them entirely. Jax worked quickly, reinforcing the supports with whatever materials he could find. "This planet doesn't give you time to think," he muttered, straining against the wind. "It just keeps throwing things at you." When the storm finally passed, the group stood soaked and exhausted. Their once orderly camp was now a mess of soggy supplies and tangled fabric. Kalen kicked at the mud in frustration. "How does anyone survive here?" he demanded, his voice tinged with both anger and disbelief. Lyra sat on a fallen log, wringing water from her hair. "Maybe that's why Earth is called a Deathworld," she said quietly. "It's not just one thing, it's everything. The weather, the plants, the animals, even the smallest details can turn deadly." Her words hung in the air, heavy with truth. Jax nodded slowly. "And yet, humans live here. They thrive here. That's what makes this planet so incredible and so dangerous." That night, as they huddled around a weak fire, the group reflected on how much they'd underestimated Earth. It wasn't just the big moments, like the bear attack, that tested them. It was the endless barrage of minor hazards, each one chipping away at their confidence and resources. Kalen stared into the flames, his earlier arrogance replaced by a growing respect for the planet's complexity. Earth wasn't trying to kill them, at least, not intentionally. But it didn't need to try. Its very nature was enough to challenge even the most advanced visitors. And as the fire crackled softly, casting shadows on their weary faces, they realized that surviving here would take more than technology or knowledge. It would take resilience, adaptability, and perhaps a bit of luck. The group decided it was time to venture closer to human civilization. So far, their encounters with Earth had been limited to its wilderness, but they were curious about the creatures who called this dangerous planet home. Professor Dren warned them to proceed with caution. "Humans may seem harmless at first," he said, "but they are as unpredictable as the rest of this world." Kalen, still eager to prove himself after the bear incident, suggested using holographic cloaks to disguise themselves. Lyra hesitated, unsure if it was wise to get too close to humans, but Jax agreed it might be worth the risk. "If we're careful, we can learn a lot," he reasoned. Against the professor's advice, the three students set off toward a nearby town. From a distance, the settlement looked quaint and peaceful. Small houses lined the streets, and people moved about their daily routines, shopping, talking, laughing. The aliens watched from the edge of the forest, marveling at how different it felt compared to the untamed wilderness they'd experienced so far. Kalen stepped forward confidently, his cloak shimmering slightly as it adjusted to blend in with the surroundings. "Let's go," he whispered, motioning for the others to follow. They entered the town cautiously, sticking to quieter streets where fewer people were around. At first, Everything seemed normal. Humans went about their business without paying any attention to the strange figures walking among them. Lyra felt a mix of awe and unease as she observed their behavior. They seemed so ordinary, yet there was an underlying energy to the way they interacted with each other, a kind of unpredictability that reminded her of Earth itself. Their curiosity led them to a small shop filled with colorful items on shelves. Kalen wandered down an aisle, examining objects he didn't recognize. He reached out to touch a glass figurine, but his hand knocked it off the shelf before he could stop himself. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the store, drawing the attention of everyone inside, including the shopkeeper. "What are you doing?" the man barked, storming over with a scowl. Kalen froze, unsure how to respond. Lyra and Jax exchanged panicked glances, realizing their cloaks might not hold up under scrutiny. The shopkeeper's voice grew louder, his gestures wild and aggressive. "Get out of here," he shouted, pointing toward the door. The aliens didn't need to be told twice. They bolted from the store, their hearts racing as they sprinted back to the safety of the forest. Once they were far enough away, they stopped to catch their breath. Kalen leaned against a tree, his face flushed with embarrassment. "That didn't go as planned," he muttered. Lyra shook her head, still trying to process what had happened. "They weren't scared of us," she said thoughtfully. "They just reacted, like we were intruders." Jax nodded, adjusting his cloak. "Humans don't see threats the same way we do. To them, we were just another problem to deal with." Back at camp, Professor Dren listened quietly as they recounted the story. When they finished, he sighed deeply. "This is why Earth is so unique and so dangerous. Humans have adapted to live alongside chaos. They've learned to handle threats quickly and decisively, whether it's a broken object or something much bigger." Lyra stared into the fire, her mind racing. "Maybe Earth isn't deadly because of its animals or weather," she said softly. "Maybe it's the humans themselves who make it a death world." Her words lingered in the air, unspoken questions hanging between them. If humans could thrive in such a hostile environment, what did that say about their strength or their nature? As the flames flickered and danced, casting shadows across their faces, the group realized they had only scratched the surface of understanding this complex planet. The group's routine was disrupted when Professor Dren fell ill. It started subtly. He complained of a headache and fatigue, brushing it off as exhaustion from the long days of exploration. But by the next morning, his condition had worsened. His skin was pale, and he struggled to sit up, his breathing shallow and labored. The students gathered around him, their faces etched with worry. "What happened?" Kalen asked, his usual arrogance replaced by genuine concern. Lyra checked the professor's vitals using her scanner, her hands trembling slightly. "His body is reacting to something," she said, her voice tight with panic. "But I don't know what." Jax quickly reviewed the data from their water purification system. "He drank from the stream yesterday," Jax said, pointing to a graph on his tablet. "I thought the filters would handle anything harmful, but—" He trailed off, his expression grim. After running further tests, he discovered microscopic organisms in the water. Tiny life forms capable of bypassing even their advanced technology. These organisms were unlike anything they had encountered before, evolving defenses that rendered their equipment useless. "We need to act fast," Lyra said, her voice firm despite her fear. She and Jax worked tirelessly, combining their knowledge to synthesize a treatment using data from the ship's medical database. They mixed compounds, adjusted dosages, and monitored the professor's response closely. Meanwhile, Callan volunteered to gather medicinal herbs he'd read about in human texts, determined to contribute in some way. Though skeptical at first, Jax agreed that natural remedies might complement their efforts. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional beep of medical equipment or the rustle of leaves as Callan returned with armfuls of plants. Lyra crushed the herbs into a paste, adding them to the solution they were preparing. "Humans have lived here for thousands of years," she said, more to herself than anyone else. If they can survive this, so can we. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, their hard work paid off. The professor's condition stabilized, his breathing growing steadier and color returning to his face. Exhausted but relieved, the students collapsed onto the ground, their minds still racing with the implications of what had happened. Earth's ability to evolve threats faster than they could adapt was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. "This changes everything," Jax said quietly, breaking the silence. "We thought our technology would protect us, but Earth's biology is unpredictable." Lyra nodded, staring at the vial of medicine in her hand. "It's not just the big things, like storms or predators. Even something as simple as water can turn deadly." Kalen, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. "I underestimated this planet," he admitted, his tone heavy with regret. "I thought we were prepared, but Earth doesn't play by our rules." Professor Dren stirred weakly, opening his eyes. His voice was faint but clear. "Earth isn't trying to harm you," he said. "It simply exists as it always has, wild, untamed, and full of life. Survival here requires respect, not dominance." As the fire crackled softly in the background, the group sat in contemplative silence. They had come to study Earth, to understand why it was called a Deathworld. But now they realized the truth went deeper than they had imagined. Earth wasn't deadly because it sought to destroy. It was deadly because it refused to conform, to yield, to be tamed. And as they looked at each other through tired eyes, they knew their journey was far from over. On one of their final excursions, the group ventured deeper into the forest than ever before. The air was thick with the smell of damp leaves and earth, and the sounds of wildlife surrounded them. Chirps, growls, and rustling noises that seemed to come from every direction. Kellen walked ahead, his earlier arrogance replaced by cautious curiosity. Lyra stayed close to Jax, her scanner constantly sweeping the area for signs of danger. Professor Dren followed behind, still recovering but determined to see the mission through. They stopped near a rocky outcrop overlooking a wide clearing. In the distance, they spotted movement, a pack of wolves moving with precision and purpose. Their sleek bodies weaved between trees as they tracked something unseen. Lyra watched in awe, her scanner analyzing their behavior. "Look at how they work together," she whispered, her voice filled with admiration. "It's like they're communicating without words." Callan nodded, equally fascinated. "They're hunting," he said softly. "But what are they after?" Before anyone could answer, another figure emerged from the shadows, a mountain lion, its golden eyes glinting in the sunlight. It moved gracefully, its muscles rippling beneath its fur. The wolves noticed it immediately, and the atmosphere shifted. What had been a coordinated hunt turned into chaos as the two predators confronted each other. The battle that followed was both brutal and mesmerizing. The wolves attacked as a team, biting and snapping at the lion, while the big cat lashed out with claws and teeth. The fight lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours to the watching aliens. Finally, the lion triumphed, driving the wolves away with a final ferocious roar. But victory came at a cost. Bloodied and weakened, the lion limped toward the edge of the clearing, its movements slow and labored. Lyra turned away, unable to watch any longer. "Why do they do this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why fight so hard when it only leads to pain?" Jax adjusted his scanner, studying the lion's injuries. "It's survival," he replied. "Every creature here fights for food, territory, or dominance. There's no room for weakness." Callan stared at the scene, his jaw clenched. So Earth isn't deadly because of one thing. It's deadly because everything is fighting. Every plant, every animal, even the weather. They all push against each other. Professor Dren nodded slowly. "Exactly. Life on Earth exists in constant competition. Even the strongest predators can fall victim to something bigger, faster, or smarter. That's why this planet has earned its reputation." As they made their way back to camp, The weight of their discovery settled over them. Earth wasn't just a collection of dangers. It was an intricate web, where every element played a role in maintaining balance. The plants, the animals, the humans, all were part of a system that thrived on struggle and adaptation. That night, as they sat around the fire, Kalen broke the silence. "I used to think Earth was dangerous because of random threats," he admitted. "But now I see it's not random at all. It's organized chaos." Lyra nodded, staring into the flames. "And humans live right in the middle of it. They must be stronger than we realized." Jax added quietly, "Or maybe they've learned to embrace the chaos instead of fighting it." Their reflections were interrupted by the distant howl of a wolf, echoing through the forest. It was a reminder that Earth's lessons weren't confined to their observations. They were woven into every moment, every breath, every heartbeat. As the fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows across their faces, the students knew they would carry these insights with them long after they left this wild, untamed world. The time had come for the group to leave Earth. Their shuttle stood ready in the clearing, its metallic surface gleaming under the pale morning light. The students moved quietly, packing up their equipment and securing the last of their samples. Each of them carried a mix of emotions: relief at leaving behind the dangers of the planet, but also a deep sense of respect for what they had experienced. As they gathered for one final meeting before departure, Professor Dren looked at his students with pride. "What have you learned?" he asked, his voice calm but filled with expectation. Kellen was the first to speak. Gone was the arrogance that had marked his early days on Earth. Instead, his tone was thoughtful, almost humble. "I thought I understood danger," he began. "But Earth showed me that danger isn't just about size or strength. It's everywhere, in the water, the air, even the smallest insect. This planet doesn't need weapons. It kills without trying." Lyra nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Earth is alive," she said softly. "Every plant, every animal, even the weather, it all works together. Humans live here because they've learned to adapt. They don't fight the chaos. They become part of it." Jax adjusted his glasses, his expression serious. "And that's why Earth is called a Deathworld. It's not just one thing, it's everything. The competition, the unpredictability, the constant struggle to survive. Even the strongest creatures can fall. That's what makes this place so incredible." Professor Dren smiled faintly, clearly pleased with their insights. "You've all grown," he said, "not just as scientists, but as beings who understand the complexity of life. Remember this: Earth isn't deadly because it seeks to destroy. It's deadly because it refuses to yield. It challenges everyone who steps foot on it, including us." With those words, they boarded the shuttle. As the hatch closed behind them, the students took one last look at the forest through the viewscreen. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves shimmering in the sunlight. Birds chirped in the distance, and somewhere deeper in the woods, a wolf howled. Earth was peaceful and chaotic all at once, a paradox they would never forget. The shuttle ascended slowly, breaking through the clouds and into the vastness of space. Below them, the blue-green orb of Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just a speck against the stars. For a long moment, no one spoke. Each of them was lost in their own thoughts, replaying the moments that had changed them forever. Finally, Kalen broke the silence. "Do you think humans know how special their planet is?" he asked, his voice tinged with wonder. Lyra shook her head. "Maybe some do, but most probably don't realize how unique Earth really is. They're too busy surviving to see the bigger picture." Jax leaned back in his seat, his gaze fixed on the stars. "Surviving is the bigger picture," he said. "That's what makes them, and this planet, so amazing." As the shuttle disappeared into the depths of space, the students carried with them more than data and samples. They carried a newfound understanding of resilience, adaptation, and the delicate balance that defined life on Earth. And though they were returning to their orderly universe, They knew they would never see their own world, or themselves, the same way again. Earth had taught them lessons they would carry for the rest of their lives. Lessons about survival, courage, and the unyielding power of nature. Lessons that reminded them, even in the safety of their advanced civilization, that chaos and beauty often walked hand in hand.